Hey there, and welcome. In this explainer, we're jumping right into one of the most important topics in biology today, the huge impact we humans have on the ecosystems that literally keep us all alive. We're going to look at the pressures we create, for sure, but also the incredible, clever solutions that we're coming up with.
You know, you can think of our impact on Earth as one giant footprint. And what I love about this image is how it shows the two sides of that story. Over on the left, you've got the heavy, damaging pressures from things like industry and pollution, but on the right, you see a much lighter, greener path, the one filled with sustainable solutions. And the key takeaway here? Which path we walk down is up to us.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get a handle on what our footprint really means. Then we'll dive into the pressures we're putting on the planet. After that, we'll flip the script and look at the solutions. And we'll wrap things up by looking at the big question. Why does all this conservation stuff matter so much anyway?
Okay, let's get into the tough stuff first, the pressures. As our population keeps growing, so does our need for food, for land, and for all sorts of resources. And this demand, well, it's been reshaping the natural world faster than ever before. All right, here's a key term you absolutely need to know for your O-levels, and it's monoculture. Just picture a gigantic field, maybe it's all corn or all wheat, stretching out as far as you can see. That's a monoculture. It's pretty much the backbone of modern industrial-scale farming. So why do we rely so heavily on these monocultures? Well, it all comes down to efficiency. I mean, look at the pros on the left. It's way easier to use big machines on one type of crop, and you can produce just massive amounts of food. But, and this is a big but, look at the cons on the right. You get a huge drop in biodiversity, you strip the soil of its nutrients, and you're basically rolling out the red carpet for pests. It makes the whole food system incredibly vulnerable.
And it's not just plants. To get the most meat and dairy, we also use what's called intensive livestock farming. Basically, this means keeping a very large number of animals like these cattle you see here packed together in indoor controlled spaces.
But again, this efficiency has a serious price tag. These crowded conditions, they bring up big questions about animal welfare. They're also a perfect breeding ground for disease, which often means we end up overusing antibiotics. And all that animal waste, it has to go somewhere, and it often pollutes the land and water. Plus, it's actually a pretty inefficient way to make food when you think about it. We have to grow enormous fields of crops just to feed all the animals.
Our hunger for more land brings us to the next massive pressure, deforestation. And this is a perfect example of a chain reaction. See, when we cut down forests, we're not just losing trees, we're destroying habitats, right? Which pushes species toward extinction. We're also getting rid of a crucial tool for absorbing CO2 so more of it stays in the atmosphere. And without those tree roots holding everything together, the soil just washes away, leading to terrible erosion and flooding. It's a domino effect.
So, that increase in CO2 in the atmosphere leads us right into our next big topic. Now, the natural greenhouse effect is a good thing. It keeps our planet warm enough for life. The problem is, our activities have kind of supercharged it, creating what we call the enhanced greenhouse effect. We're just trapping way too much heat.
And you don't have to take my word for it, just look at the data. On the left, you can see the concentration of CO2 in the air. See how it just skyrockets after the Industrial Revolution? Now look at the graph on the right. That's the average global temperature. It follows that exact same upward curve. That correlation, I mean, it's just impossible to ignore.
Okay, another type of pollution we really need to get our heads around is eutrophication. This is what happens when we dump way too many nutrients, think fertilizers from farms or untreated sewage, into our rivers and lakes.
This diagram here shows the process perfectly. First, all those extra nutrients wash into the water. This causes algae to go crazy and grow super fast. That's called an algal bloom. This thick green layer then blocks all the sunlight from getting to the plants underneath, so they die. Then, bacteria move in to decompose all that dead stuff, and in the process, they use up all the oxygen in the water. And the result? You get a dead zone where fish and other animals simply can't breathe.
Okay, that was a pretty heavy look at all the problems. But here's the good news. That is not the end of the story. So now, let's pivot to part 2 and check out some of the really hopeful and amazing solutions that science and sustainability are giving us.
And right away, we can see how the solution flows directly from the problem. The answer to deforestation? Well, it's reforestation. This image is so powerful because it shows us literally turning the tide. By planting new trees, we can actively start to heal habitats, bring back biodiversity, and help rebalance the entire ecosystem. And you know, we can also be a lot smarter about how we use forests from the get-go. here are 3 key strategies. We can make sure logging companies are required to replant every tree they cut down. We can practice what's called selective felling, where we only take certain trees and leave the rest of the habitat intact. Or we can use really old techniques like coppicing, which lets us harvest wood over and over without ever killing the tree. So the bottom line is, forests can absolutely be a renewable resource, but only if we manage them the right way.
The same idea applies to our oceans. To stop overfishing, we've got a whole toolkit of rules we can use. Fishing quotas put a strict legal limit on how many fish can be caught. Regulating the size of the holes in fishing nets and the mesh size makes sure that smaller, younger fish can escape to grow up and reproduce. And creating protected areas where no fishing is allowed at all gives fish populations a safe place to bounce back.
But what about those species that are already right on the edge? All those pressures we talked about have pushed so many to the very brink of extinction. But even then, there's still hope. It really isn't too late.
And here is the living proof. On the left, that's the black-footed ferret. It was actually declared extinct in the wild back in 1979. But then a tiny group was found, and through a captive breeding program, they're now back out there. And on the right, the Mauritian green parakeet. Its population dropped to just 10 birds. Can you imagine? But with intense conservation work, there are now over 700. These stories are just amazing, and they show us that with real dedication, we can pull species back from the brink.
So this brings us to our final and maybe our most important section. We've seen the problems, we've seen the solutions, but why does any of this conservation stuff really truly matter?
At the end of the day, conservation isn't just about saving a cute panda or a pretty flower. It's about protecting the incredibly complex systems, clean air, fresh water, healthy soil, that support all life on Earth, and that absolutely includes us.
So, if you boil it all down, it comes to this. We need conservation for 3 main reasons. First, to maintain biodiversity, because ecosystems with lots of different species are just stronger and more stable. Second, to secure our own future. The natural world is like a giant library of genetic information that could hold the keys to new medicines or hardier crops. And finally, it's just the right thing to do. We have an ethical responsibility to protect this planet for everyone who comes after us.
And that brings us right back to where we started, our footprint. It can be heavy and destructive, or it can be one of healing and stewardship. Everything we do today is shaping the world of tomorrow. So the question we're all left with is, what kind of legacy are we going to leave behind?
Hey, if this explainer helped you get a better handle on our human footprint, do us a huge favor and help us grow ours by subscribing to Spotwork Learning and hitting that like button. We've got plenty more O-level explainers on the way, so you're not going to want to miss out. Stay tuned.